Hello everyone. Today I'm going to go over removing and installing a Roto-Ray Model 4000W. I'm taking this video over the course of reinstalling, but I'm going to go over some of the removal processes. What you'll need are some nut drivers, standard Allen keys, a slotted driver, and some electrical tape. So this is the remove portion of the truck. There's a single lead wire, positive, with a crimped on hoop here, and it gets the ground from the housing. Here's the motor assembly. This was sent out because it would not turn the light housing, and I was told by the manufacturer this was a weak motor, so I sent it back to them in Virginia, and they rebuilt it and shipped it back to me very quickly. We can see here's the motor. In the center of the screen, that brass stud has some nylon isolating it from the aluminum plate and brass nuts. That's the positive lead. Here's the gearing. There's the output shaft, brass contact washer on the output shaft, and a nylock washer to hold everything in place. This stud is about a number 6, and that's what holds this housing in place, which is called the spider. You can see on the inside, those are the crimped contacts for the positive leads for the lights themselves, and it gets its ground contact from the housing. When you're doing this work, to remove the nose cone, which is this portion, there's a single set screw. That single set screw is a 5/64 of an inch drive. So that'll come out. See what I indicated in there before. Use your nut driver. I believe it's a 5/16 nut. And then there are 2 sets of set screws that hold the spider onto the shaft. So 4 in total, and those will use a 3/32 nut driver. Excuse me, 3/32 Allen key. Once you remove the slotted screws, the 6 that hold the motor housing to the, I guess we'll call it the face adapter, you can see here, it's a little tricky to get this out. This was explained to me from the factory that you just have to remove it by rotating a little bit. The reason you have to rotate a little bit is because this fly gear is a larger diameter on its outside than some of the mounting points will hold in. So the bottom and the top have the largest amount of clearance for those gears, so you just have to rotate past. Kind of like turning to the 1 o'clock position. Well, let's do that again. Turn to the 1 o'clock position, get past the first gear, turn to the 12 o'clock position, it'll seat fine. Now I'm going to go through reinstallation. 3/8 inch driver to remove the positive lead. Alright, positive lead's reinstalled to be somewhat in line with this plate so that it's got minimum interruption. One thing I forgot to mention is these are the 2 motor bolts that hold the motor to the plate. They pass through the whole motor casing. This rear one has to be cut down. This is a 2013 E1 Cyclone 2, so it has that slant to the cab. And you can see where I was marking it up when I was testing it on the back. So after this was rebuilt, had full-length studs, I just cut it off and filed it down. And you'll need to do that to make sure this fits properly to get your full depth. So we're going to reinsert it. Careful to tuck all my wires back there. 1 o'clock. 1 o'clock, 12 o'clock. Alright, we're going to put our slotted screws back in and then go for reinstallation of the spider. Alright, the motor's back on the housing. These are about number 6 screws. I didn't torque them down with a calibrated torquing device. I did it by hand. I did do this in a cross bolt pattern because it is a rounded item, and these don't have any lock washers behind them, and there was no thread locker on the threads when I took the screws off. So I'm going to keep an eye on this, in intervals going down the road, and make sure we don't have any loosening. All right, for the reinstallation of the light housing called the spider, I'm going to remove this nylock nut and the brass washer. This brass washer was given to me by the factory because I lost the old one, despite the fact they told me to be careful about losing it. So I recommend you be very careful about losing it because I can't find it under that dry decking. All right, I've loosened the set screws. The center's lined up well. We're going to go ahead and put it on. Just use my thumb to get everything worked in there. Don't want to press too hard. Got to be very careful about ripping out those wires. Alright, it's remounted. I'm going to put the set screw back in place, and I want to make sure when I torque it down that I'm not actually torquing it. I'm using the nylock washer function to hold everything in place, that this housing won't travel back and forth, but also not tight enough that it's not going to turn. I don't want to stress out this motor and have to go through this process again. Alright, so upon installation, found out that I was wrong. It's an 11/32 nut driver, which means it's a number 8 stud. Still pretty small, but a little bit beefier than a number 6. So I've got this installed. I got some rotation here. I have a little bit of play. I'm going to get these Allen screws, or set screws, tightened down firmly, but still able to allow this system to rotate, and then recheck the nut, then recheck the set screws, and move forward. Alright, so when I put these set screws in, I kept rotating around to make sure I had true center over that number 8 stud. It would also allow everything to set a little easier. I didn't use a calibrated torque device for this. I have my T-handled nut driver, my T-handled hex driver, and it got to the point where that was actually flexing to put enough torque on these. So I don't want to break the tool while doing this, because that would be the end of the job. But everything holds in nice. I have that nylock nut firmly in place, and everything's still able to rotate very easily. Next, we'll put the nose cap back in place, torque that down, test, and clean it up. Nose cap's in place, single set screw. Now the Roto-Ray on my apparatus is linked into the air brake, so the air brake has to be engaged for the Roto-Ray to operate when the emergency lights are on. So disengage the air brake, and it works. It sounds exactly like it's supposed to. I hope this helps with installing and removing, or removing and then reinstalling your Roto-Ray. If you have any questions, please post them in the comments below, and I'll get to them when I can. Good luck.